Hey, what's up, YouTube? How's it going, guys? Oh man, I am blocked on Instagram once again. Give me a second. All right, how's it going, guys? I'm going to start in just a second here. Once again, I've been banned from going live on Instagram. It happens every now and then. I'm just going to let everyone know where they can find me. It's the old game of social media. Got some good things to share with you guys today. I'm just trying to manage something here. Tell my Instagram people where they can find me. The social media tyrants have targeted me once again. Where's everybody tuning in from? All right, here we go. Just me and you today, YouTube. All right, got some great things to share with you guys today. Hope everyone's doing well. Heart star from India, excellent. So, um, lots of good things going on. It's been an exciting time, and let's see. Well, let's get right into it. I wanted to talk about sexual healing today, and of course, some of the different aspects of this in our modern day world, the challenges we face in regards to our sexuality, and especially as men, how we can really make this journey of getting very clear what's driving us in our sexual impulses, in our relationships with others. How can we make that a bit more conscious and harmonious in our life, and ultimately use the sexual power to empower us to be more creative and more driven in our lives, rather than just having this impulsive scratch we need to itch, right? So we all grew up in this world with this conditioning around sexuality and sex, and most of us, I think it's safe to say, have some kind of trauma, shame, wounding in general around our sexuality and our sexual energy. And it's causing us to be very disconnected from it and disempowered with it, in that we're not able to fully integrate our sexual energy into our being. And so we end up either suppressing it or wasting it. It drives us to do weird things, right? And it's just kind of part of the world, the times we're born into, this age that we're in, the conditioning, the control system, the matrix around this, and a major control system of humanity. Really, the noose around the neck, or maybe around the balls, we could say. That's a nice visual. Is our sexual energy. Um, it's an interesting thing because sex and sexuality is something that's so suppressed, and there's so much guilt and shame around it. It's not something we're able to really openly talk about usually in our day-to-day lives with, most people anyway, right? But at the same time, we're bombarded with sexual stimulation and imagery 24/7. So it's this paradox with that. And it leads to a lot of, neurosis and traumas, frustrations, imbalances in general around not really knowing why we have this sex drive, what to do with it, uh, and how to have a deeper experience of it, have it actually be something fulfilling rather than just this elusive, fleeting, short-lived sexual experience, right? And so, for men and women, this looks a bit differently. The different patterns we may have, the wounds around this, and things like this. So, sexual healing, I would say, is really about liberating the sexual energy, getting very clear about what is blocking us, what is blocking our experience of free flow of our sexual energy, and what would maybe be a more harmonious pattern for us to have, right? So the tendency, for women, I just want to mention here this point about women because it's something anyways, it's an important thing for men to understand. I think is that for women, there's often this trauma, pain, old patterns, old emotions stored within the yoni space. I'll talk in a bit about where men kind of store these patterns, what happens with this for men. But for women, they tend to have these patterns stored in their yoni space. For women, most women have only experienced clitoral orgasms and tend to favor clitoral stimulation. But the clitoris is this, it's a pleasure zone. It's what has like 8,000 nerve endings or whatever. It was created for pleasure, but for women, a much deeper experience of orgasm lies in working with the internal areas, the G spot, the A spot, the cervical orgasm, right? But for most women, these areas are actually blocked. They're even like uh, there's all this tough, bound up tissue in that area, and it's actually painful for a lot of women to have this stimulated. So these areas must be activated, right? And so this is a process. I think this is very important for men to understand because women who've experienced trauma, emotion, negative emotions, around sex, which is most women, again, most people in general just have this wounding around sexuality. But for women, this work of unlocking the yoni space can really liberate them to release some of these old patterns and to clear up some of the scar tissue, the armoring, the toughness and tightness that exists in the yoni space. A man can help a woman with this by massaging internally, either with his fingers or his wand of light, his lingam, his penis, and so this brings us to men in that this dynamic of sex is very unconscious. We watched porn and we get obsessed with this visual imagery and all these things, and we just try to reenact what all of these people in porn are doing, thinking that we'll find enjoyment through sex doing that. And sure, we do initially. It feels good, it's fun, whatever. But ultimately, it tends to um, become very, we get stuck in this pattern of favoring this ejaculatory type of orgasm, concentrating solely on this visual stimulation of porn. It's all about just a body that we thrust into, and that's what it's all about, right? So for men, sex is very disconnected from their heart. It has a lack of feeling, of emotional connection, of spiritual connection, both with themselves and with their partner. So it ultimately leads to an experience of sex that's very unfulfilling. And again, it's just you're scratching an itch, okay, thrust in there, it feels good, and okay, now I'm tired. What should I do now? I'm gonna watch some football. I'm gonna go to sleep. It's just not a very fulfilling sexual experience for how much energy most men invest into trying to get laid, trying to get sex. They actually don't even enjoy it that much overall because they're just goal oriented on trying to get off quickly, right? So for women, it's awakening the yoni, clearing up the tension patterns and the blocked emotions in that space, so that they can fully embody these energy zones of the G spot, the cervix, and have powerful, mind blowing full body orgasms, deep heart opening and connection with their partner. For men, it's really about opening up. Maybe we could say the spine, the spinal connection, this kind of vertical channel of sexual energy movement. I mean, though in reality, it's much more than just the spine. A lot of the fire paths, the yoga paths, all this talk about the spine and opening that up, Kundalini, which is great. That's definitely true, right? but there's a bit more to it than that, right? But basically, we could say for men, again, it's this healing of this. Really, it's a connection. It's a vertical connection. For most men, it's just like, okay, the genitals are down here. That's when I'm horny and I want to put my dick somewhere. That's that experience. But then there's like my heart space. Oh, that's I'm not in that very often, right? Maybe occasionally I let myself, but like basically there's this disconnect between these different areas of the body. And um, basically it's reopening this communication and circulation of energy for men, because we've had this one way program of sexual energy flowing out the body. And so it's about reconnecting internally the different aspects of our being, what this really is, reconnecting sex with our heart, or the sexual center with our heart, so there's an emotional connection there, so that we're not just just trying to have sex with someone because we're horny and we're lustful and we need to scratch the itch, but it becomes more about connecting with someone. And that's what really activates the penis, this radiant, glowing, this wand of light that our cock was meant to be, comes with this activation of the heart, as well as the crown center activation as well, this spiritual connection. And it connects to our sexual energy, lifts the vibration of it, makes it lighter, makes it more pleasant to hold in the body. Because I've said this many times, but most men are uncomfortable with the feeling of arousal. They need to get rid of it as soon as they possibly can. But when you mix this heart energy and this upper head, crown, third eye energy with the sexual energy, it changes it. It alchemizes it. It becomes much more digestible, much more pleasant, much lighter. It's easier to hold it. This is the full body orgasm, basically, right? And you know, for men, I think for people in general, but especially for men, is often this pattern of like chasing these things outside of ourselves. Like I'm I need to get the approval of this woman. I need to make sure these I need to attract all these women. I need to dominate them and like have sex with them. And I'm unhappy if I'm not you know out doing these things. And what I'm really getting at here is this ultimately the space of like emptiness, of like needing to like desperately grab things from around you, try to fulfill yourself. I need this relationship. I need this sex to make myself feel numb for a bit, to scratch this itch. I need this social media to occupy my mind for the present moment. And so there's often this deeper underlying emptiness, and that's causing men to be excessively outwardly driven and trying to like dominate, trying to accumulate, trying to I'm powerful, I'm the most good looking, the most, just strengthening the ego, because ultimately inside there's this neediness and there's this feeling of emptiness because you're not getting this earth energy, this feeling of wholeness and completeness and centeredness within yourself. And so for men, the learning to first of all connect with your heart, connect with yourself, and develop self-love. This is the thing: is a lot of us are lacking self-love, and so we're trying to get it from the external world, because our we got yelled at by our parents when we were very young, and we thought we were a terrible person, and then our teachers, our politicians, our priests continue to abuse us. And it's just this whole dynamic of I need to find love outside of myself because I'm a horrible person, and this manifests as that, like chasing, trying to control, trying to dominate the external world, and it just leads to the same old situations. So learning to connect from within, and first of all, for men, learning to love themselves again, learning to connect with their bodies. There's often all this shame for men around self-pleasure, masturbation, especially in the no-fap community, and people practicing semen retention as well. It's like masturbation and self-love, self-pleasure becomes this dirty, shameful thing. So it's like they don't really learn how to properly, on a mechanical level, use their tools, we could say, right? How to manage your arousal, how to keep yourself aroused, how to have healthy erection levels, healthy sex drive, and how to control ejaculation, how to learn how to move that arousal through the body, have multiple orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms. You really have to simply train to do that. You have to get to learn your own body. And it's this process of loving yourself, of bringing consciousness and awareness within yourself, and remembering like this isn't actually a dirty, shameful thing. This is you connecting with yourself, activating this deep, vulnerable, powerful energy that everyone told you was like wrong and dirty and you should feel guilty about it. You should feel shameful. And so you're like walking around with this heavy baggage, stuffing all of your sexual desires in the closet until there's like a private opportunity to allow this weird stuff to come out. So I know that was a lot I just dropped there, but again, we're complicated, planet Earth 2022. There's a lot of baggage that our ancestors and other generations have left us with, and we're here to complete. We can either complete it or we can keep acting out these old, bullshit conflicts and arguments, and just keep running around in circles like most of the world has been for the past hundreds of thousands of years. So liberating these patterns of your sexual energy. I was going somewhere with this, right? So again, men, opening up this spinal pathway, this ascending current of the sexual energy, so that it's this loving, connected, spiritual energy, this raw, creative power that wants to help you create from your heart, to create, maybe a little more joy, a little more light, a little more cool stuff in the world. Because there's a lot of dark bullshit and Debbie Downer stuff out there. So it's like when you can balance your sexual energy, get it moving through your body, that gives you the ultimate, manifestation power, creative power, just this raw drive and potential to do whatever it is you want and to live an amazing life. So basically, doing this work is incredibly powerful. It's going to heal you. You can help heal your partner. And this is the real beauty, is the tantric sex, the deep intertwining, the sexual kung fu sex, where you and your partner, it's this healing. It's not just like, okay, I need to fuck you really quick and then or I'm gonna go to sleep. Sure, if it's occasionally you experience that, whatever, but like when that's your only experience of sex, it's just boring to me personally. When it's like you're looking in your partner's eyes and you're opening your heart and you're like, oh my God, like I love you. I love myself. I love life. I love the universe. I feel the light of the sun reflecting from my body, radiating. I know this sounds like some hippie new age bullshit, but like this is the type of thing you experience when you get into this work, and it's fucking incredible. And there's like tears. You're opening up. Your channels are bursting open. You feel like you took 3 hits of LSD, but you're you're sober, right? And you're just glowing for days after this. You're creative. You're like, why was I so occupied with like all this bullshit in my life? Like, this is what's real. Feeling good, feeling connected to myself, feeling connected to my partner, feeling connected to the universe, living a life of purpose and meaning, other than just trying to numb myself with Bud Light tequila shots and football. So yeah, that's the real depth, is reawakening to who you truly are, and sexual energy is a valuable tool for that. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But again, if you guys are new to this, you're just jumping on here like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Where do I even begin with all this? Check out my sexual kung fu exercise playlist for some practical tools, because we can talk about this stuff all day, but if you just talk about it and have the theoretical concept, you're going to get nowhere, absolutely nowhere. You have to have a practice that you're doing every day to feel it in your body to make progress. Otherwise, it's just talk. There's more than enough talk in this world. All right, with that, I'm going to answer some questions now. So feel free to type in your questions. Andreas Hofer says, in yoga, they teach that headstand and shoulder stand are the best ways to sublimate the sexual energy. If the microcosmic orbit doesn't work for me, are these good alternatives? You can try it. I personally don't feel a sexual energy sublimation effect from doing headstands, handstands. I've done many. I've spent probably hours in an inverted position because it's like, I'm not going to go to that, but basically, yeah, to really move the sexual energy out of the sexual center, it requires some internal skill generally, right? Usually just going upside down isn't enough. If it is, you can try it. And if it sublimates your sexual energy, you'll know. And then all you have to do is do a shoulder stand. Like, I don't need this microcosmic orbit bullshit this guy's going on about. I'm just going to stand in a shoulder stand. That's great. For me, I need, something a little more juice. And you said the microcosmic orbit doesn't work for you. And this can be just a matter of developing your skill with it. Like the first time you do it, maybe not much happens. This is skill that you train, you get better and better at it, right? Kung fu, sexual kung fu skill, discipline, time spent training. It's not easy necessarily, but it's you keep working at it and it gets better. And also, I think it's, this is extremely important. Anyone working sexual energy, have creative outlets, have something that you're, putting your creative energy into, like whether it's art, it's, I'm a musician. I put my sexual energy into creating music. I also put it into creating content. I put my sexual energy into creating over 500 videos on YouTube, so you need to have an outlet for this energy. Otherwise, yeah, it's just going to pressurize and like cook you in an unpleasant way often. So that's helpful as well. Rendell Frank says, would a person's sex drive be directly affected by the amount of emotional trauma they have? It certainly can have an effect on your sexual energy and your sex drive. Everyone holds trauma differently and it affects them differently, but it certainly can make, people very closed down. Some people, for example, if you've been sexually abused or something like that, it can be the tendency of it just like absolutely, killing you have no libido, anorgasmia, all these things. It's just like I'm not even going to, live in this part of my body. I'm just completely shut it down. No life force in there. Sexual center shut down. That can be a reaction that your energy body has. It could also be the opposite. Some people, they have been sexually abused, so they kind of compensate by becoming overly sexual and overly lustful themselves, right? It really depends. There's a lot of factors to it. Okay, Lucius. What's up, Lucius? Says, one should take it. Thanks for your work. I'm not sure what you're saying there. The first part of that may have gotten cut off. My apologies. Heartstar says, what kind of trauma is generally stored in the balls? Good question. In the testicles for men. It's not really like, it's always like, oh, this type of, negative experience is stored here in your body. This is stored here. I don't think it's as formulaic as that. Is that a word? Formulaic, formula driven. So it will depend. What you can do is simply feel into that area, massage your balls a little bit, put your mind in them, absorb your mind into your testicles, breathe into them, and just smile to them and say, hey, what's in there? What pattern are you holding on to? Testicles, my lovely balls. What are you holding on to? What feeling is in there? And just notice what you start to feel, breathing into that area, feeling into it. You can do this with any part of your body, and it will, be a good indication of maybe what you're feeling in there. But all kinds of things. I will say that from a Chinese medicine perspective, testicles are part of the kidney system. The kidney system is basically all the fluids of the body, the fluid systems, including the genitals. So it could be like patterns of fear around sexuality, performance anxiety, fear of not being good enough sexually, all kinds of things, right? Maybe something around masculinity, and it's difficult to say. Only you can feel into those balls and tell me what you feel. This is for some reason that just reminded me of the last time I had to get a physical. There's, in I don't know if it's a universal thing, but here in the West, when we get a physical, the doctor has to check us for a hernia, so he's got to stick his finger in your balls. It's awkward. And there's this guy had the like creepiest voice. He had this voice like this. He's like, okay, it's the hernia check. Hernia check. Drop your trousers. I'm like, oh my god, this is weird. Last time I had a man touch my balls. Some doctor with a froggy voice. Anyways, I just felt like sharing that. Interpret Singh says, how long does it take for me to see increased memory while I am practicing semen retention? It depends. Not everyone's going to experience this. I think this kind of relates to really Jing. Again, talking about kidney energy here. Kidney also partially may include aspects of the brain, like the fluids, the brain fluids and things like that. And so the Jing relates to this water element. When you're excessively ejaculating, you're taxing that water element. You're losing your Jing, right? And memory is associated with the water element. Water holds memory. It holds, it holds vibration, holds a charge. It holds the past in it. And so this excessive loss of Jing can tend to have the brain not perform as well. That can lead to decreased memory and things like that. So rebuilding the Jing, that water element, can For some people, improved memory. I feel like my memory got way better when I started practicing semen retention, but not everyone is going to experience that. Yeah, Lucius, whatever you're trying to type in, it's like YouTube's not having it. It's like, nope, we're censoring that, whatever it is. Maybe you could like put stars in between each letter of whatever it is. Yeah, sometimes YouTube filters like comments and questions people put in here. So if I'm ignoring your question, that's why. It's because I'm not seeing it. Gilbert Vianos says, how long should you try to meditate for a day? Like how long every day should you try to meditate? I think a good starting point is 5 or 10 minutes. You know, if you I remember when I was first learning to meditate, I was like 19 years old. And I remember the first time I sat there, I was like, okay, I'm going to meditate. I just knew, I was getting into yoga and like Eastern philosophy. I was like, ooh, meditation. And I'd always been attracted to meditation. Like I remember my mom showed me this picture. She found me. I'm like 6 years old. I'm sitting in full lotus position, like my hands in a mudra. Just like, I'm like, when did that happen? Like I must have seen it in a movie or something like that. So I was always just like attracted to meditation, but it wasn't until I was 19 years old that I started formally practicing it. So I remember the first time I practiced meditation, I'm like, okay, I had all these like ideas. I'm like, oh, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to like have visions and all these things like you see in the movies. And so I sit there and like, 2 minutes felt like an hour. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like thinking a lot. This is boring. And so, meditation is something you must develop. And I've been doing it pretty much every day since I was 19 years old. And it's gotten a lot better since then, I will say, in the past 20, no, God, how old am I? 14 years since then, whatever. I'm 33 now. But yeah, I think 5 to 10 minutes is a great starting point. You can increase to 15 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour, whatever. But I think at least 10 minutes of meditation a day is good. I try to get a minimum of 30 in daily. Formulaic is a word. Thanks, James. Okay, Miguel Garcia says, I've learned that emotional trauma is stored in the lungs and the hips. Is that true for men or just women since their hips widen during pregnancy? Emotional trauma can be hidden everywhere. You can have emotional trauma in your finger. You know what I mean? It's usually, we'll talk about this for a little bit. It's, and a lot of my training, this comes from the Taoist model, Taoist cosmology. And that usually, generally, the first place we hold emotions is in the organ and channel system, the superficial channel system, the 12 organ meridians. So, for example, and this is a generalization, but you can hold anger patterns related to anger in your liver channel. So it could be like around the area of the liver, which also kind of relates to the diaphragm, solar plexus area. That could, patterns of anger and things like that in this area, but it could also be somewhere in the liver channel, which runs down kind of towards the inside of the legs and the big toe. So maybe like a muscle along that pathway has like a trigger point on it, this tension locked up. It could be a pattern relating to your wood element, and goes on. So the organs and the organ channels are usually the first place we store our baggage. And when it's really, really deep, it gets stored it gets pushed down even deeper into the bones. Uh, that's, it's like, so that's where we tend to hold a really, really deep, real suppressed stuff. A lot of ancestral patterns too. Like when we're born, we get a lot of gifts from our parents, our ancestors, but we also get their baggage, their incompletions, and it's literally stored in the blood, in the bones, right? And that also relates to the deeper channel, the 8 extraordinary meridians. So that's the deepest layer of like shoving stuff in. If you've got stuff, held in often we have stuff in our left and right core channels, the Chong Mai thrusting channels. That's like the real deep mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa stuff. So, it's deep. It's not just like, yeah, it's just here. It's just there. It can be all over. Yeah. Okay, hey James. James says, you touched on this in your multi-orgasmic man course, but to summarize, what are the best kidney energy building exercises? I think Qigong is number one. It has been for me anyway. I had deficient kidney for a long time. Too much ejaculating, too much, drinking alcohol and taking all kinds of stupid things in my teenage years and 20s. I really, I used to drink like energy drinks like Monster and Red Bull and that garbage and drink a bunch of coffee when I was a teenager. Just totally destroyed my adrenals and my kidneys. So it took me a little bit to recover from that. Qigong, though, I think is number one. Zhanzhuang is really good for building the kidneys. That's the standing qigong. Deep earth pulsing qigong is also really great. I have a version of that on my YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean you can even look up like kidney building qigong, but I think those are the most powerful that I've experienced personally. Kidney tonifying herbs, kidney yin formulas, Chinese herbs. Dragon Herbs has some great ones. What's the Shou Wu formulation? Primal Yin Replenisher, I think, is also good. I've been taking that one recently. Most people, constant kidney energy support is good because that's what most people are deficient in. Kidneys like stillness and rest and quiet and calmness. And the modern life is the opposite of that. So it tends to deplete our kidney energy, which brings me to another point that another very, very, very supportive thing for your kidneys is to simply rest more, to chill out, to, you know, lay on the grass, chill, listen to the birds singing and watch the clouds go over. Your kidneys want stillness and calmness. So if you're not getting enough rest, it's going to be impossible to build your kidney chi. This last winter, I really gave myself a rest because that's the best time to build your kidney energy is in the winter. That's the season of the water element. It's when the earth is pulling all its chi within. The trees pull their chi out of their leaves and into their roots, so everything's going down into the earth. So it's a time to like go within and be still. I basically took like all of December off. I did very little work and just like really chilled out, which is not an easy thing for me to do. I'm a very young, driven, fiery person. And so, but it really, really nourished me. And I've just been, having a super productive, um, driven, energized, healthy year because I really allowed my kidneys to rest in the winter. Yeah, hope that's helpful. Also the just deep, quiet breathing, not necessarily like pranayama, like forced breathing. Those are great practices, but like for the kidneys, they want quiet, like anchored, low abdominal, gentle, quiet breathing really builds the kidneys. Anything that builds the dantian as well is usually going to be supportive of the kidneys. There's a connection there between strong kidney chi and building the dantian. Okay, JK says, I have all sensation on my frenulum area. I can keep it up until stimulation is on the frenulum, or I am manually stimulating. As soon as I stop, I get it down. Why is this happening? Oh, what do you mean by you get it down? Like you lose your erection or you ejaculate? I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. You're talking about an erection. I can keep it up until stimulation is on the frenulum. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there. Sorry. If you could kind of rephrase that. Okay, Andreas says, have you heard of the concept of OHAS from yoga? If yes, what is your take on it? Teachers like Sadhguru talk about it. Yeah, OHAS. I think basically this correlates to Jing in the Chinese medicine system. Chinese medicine, Jing, Qi, and Shen, which are basically three forms, vibrations of what we usually call energy, or what most people refer to as Qi is really Jing, Qi, Shen. Three kind of octaves, different forms of energy. And my understanding is that OHAS more or less correlates to Jing. So it's kind of like our physical essence, our vitality, relation to our physical vitality. And that's kind of our base energy that we use to produce more chi and to alchemize into Shen as well. So that eventually feeds our energy and our spiritual awareness, having the strong reservoir of Jing, or the OHAS. Maybe they have a slightly different take on it, but my understanding is it more or less correlates. And so kind of the brahmacharya path is about strengthening that OHAS, building the Jing, as we would say in the sexual kung fu. Okay. Heartstar says, "Are you familiar with white tantra and the alchemy associated with that? If so, what are your opinions on the importance of practicing with your partner and the benefits?" Yeah. So white tantra is basically like the solo path, right? Of celibacy and internal alchemical, basically celibacy and building up your own sexual energy and transmuting that into up the sushumna, into spirit, into kundalini, whatever. Um, yes. So my understanding is basically like most internal alchemical systems around this transmutation of the raw sexual energy, building that up, harnessing it, not wasting it, but building it up, filling the reservoir of that, and then kind of lighting the cauldron, uh, cooking that raw sexual energy into something more useful. Because our just this raw, lustful, horny energy, yeah, it can be very driving and things like that, but ultimately it doesn't do you a whole lot of good just to leave it in that state. You want to refine it, you want to alchemize it, which is what we do in the sexual kung fu system. Circulate it through the body, change the form of it. And so, yeah, the whole thing is you cook this energy, you store it up, you do these. Tantra has all these different practices, these kind of Kriya yoga type practices where you um, basically, yeah, create this upward flow of that energy, transforming into spirit and uh, accelerating your spiritual path. It's great. I practiced that type of thing for many years. Um, but yeah, the question of what are the importance of practicing with a partner and the benefits. I've had both approaches. I've been celibate for times and, completely solo cultivation, solo, just my own sexual energy. And I've had, many years of partner practice as well. And I definitely prefer practicing with a partner because number one, it's kind of how our bodies are designed. They're designed we have these inherently polarized bodies. Um, and so when we combine yin and yang, when our on a physical level, when we connect with somewhere else, it produces more energy than we could by ourselves. And there's just a lot more energy in that. There's a lot more satisfaction and fulfillment overall because it's like if like I'm gonna come into this human body and have the human experience and not have sex. I mean, come on, you know what I mean? It's like who would I think that's one of the biggest attractors of signing up to fucking come down to planet Earth is to all the sex you can have, baby. I mean, I'm saying that a bit jokingly, but overall, like I'm about embracing all aspects of existence, rather than just like, oh, this is holy and this is wrong and dirty. And I don't have that belief system. I think that everything is holy in its own way. And it's about equally embodying both. And I think that, it's just lonely. It can just be lonely being celibate. Like if that naturally happens in your path, like you come to a point where like, you know what, I don't feel attracted to relationships and the opposite, or whatever your sexual preference is. I don't feel attracted to sexual relationships anymore, and it's a natural thing. Fine, that's healthy. It's because you've evolved that in your practice. That's spontaneous. But when it's like, well, I'd really like to be with someone, I have the desire to, but this spiritual dogma told me I can't. If I do, I'm dirty and I'm wrong, I'm going to go to hell. So I'm going to suppress that. That always results in severe psychic imbalances, neurosis. We have the classical gurus that were celibate, these high level gurus, and then they come to America and it's like, oh, there's all these women and it's free range, baby, and they're sleeping with their followers and all these things. So it's just, anyways, I didn't mean to go on that far about this, but yeah, basically, I think that I prefer cultivation with a partner over solo cultivation, and I think that a lot of the reason for this, like a lot of spiritual paths are just like, yeah, just don't have sex, just don't engage in it, just ignore your sex drive, suppress it, just sublimate it. I think a lot of it's just that it's a bit sticky. It takes some skill to be able to, for men, step away from the ejaculatory experience of sex and to not get overly distracted by their sex drive while being on the spiritual path. But I think being able to integrate both is, incredibly powerful. It's been my experience anyway. Interpret Singh says, "Do you think that people who keep semen have higher cognitive abilities?" Thanks, bro. Maybe, maybe not. It depends. There's so many variables here. It's not like a lot of people get into this thing of like semen retention's everything. It's going to cure everything. It's going to make every single aspect of your life better. And obviously, I've talked it up a bit as well because I've experienced phenomenal benefits from it. But there's so many other factors. Like you can be practicing semen retention. You can, never ejaculate in your life. But if you're like drinking fluoridated water, you're eating McDonald's every day, you're smoking cigarettes, like you're probably not going to have very great cognitive ability. So just like seeing the bigger picture of like, there's so many different things here, right? Gilbert Viano says, "What are your thoughts on abortion?" Oh boy, I don't have a strong opinion. I don't really have an opinion on abortion. Just to be honest, it's not something I really think about. Um, I'm conscious of my own reproductive ability, I would say, and it's you know, I think the first step is to learn your body, learn where your woman is at in her cycle, so that you only experience pregnancy when you want to, right? But I also, it's also an interesting thing of like, again, someone without. No, I'm not going to go into it. I don't have a strong opinion. It's yeah. Okay. I asked because I almost had a baby and the woman got an abortion without my say. It has been messing with me for a long time. I mean, here's the whole thing. Ultimately, it's like what a woman does with her body. Is it, someone who's, I don't know what it's like to have a womb, to have a baby, to be pregnant, especially if she was like raped by someone and it was against her will. Like, who am I to say what's right and wrong in that situation? I don't know. That's why I'm like, I choose not to be an authoritative figure on this subject. There's a lot of other people arguing about it. I'll let them, come to their own conclusion. It's not something that really occupies space in my mind. Jan Rossman says, how to overcome sexual frustration. This is ultimately it's a pattern of incompletion. You in some way your sexual energy is not reaching completion. Because you're lonely, you're not having sex, maybe you're not giving yourself pleasure, you're just not experiencing pleasure and orgasm in general. It's not in a fulfilling way. So there's many aspects to this. I will tell you what helped me overcome sexual frustration was sexual kung fu. Um, Even when I was, my younger years in sexual relationships, it still was like sex was, it wasn't often terribly fulfilling for me because I was stuck in this really unhealthy dynamic of every time I had sex, I was just goal oriented on having the ejaculatory orgasm. It was all about that. So I was rushing through sex and quickly ejaculating, and it was just always this fleeting experience. And I feel like I was never able to get enough of it, right? And practicing sexual kung fu really changed this whole dynamic for me. And again, spending many years single and um, feeling sexually frustrated, whatever, practicing sexual kung fu completely changed this dynamic for me. Number one, I learned how to connect with my own body. I began a solo cultivation practice, self pleasure, and that's how I learned to have non ejaculatory orgasms and to have pretty good control over my ejaculation because it was part of my practice. And it also taught me how to bring myself sexually to completion without ejaculating and experiencing this whole different paradigm of sex and pleasure. Um, and then, of course, once I engaged in relationship with others, sex became much more fulfilling. So here's the whole thing about, first of all, learning to connect with your own body, to fulfill your own needs, and sexual cultivation can be part of that. Learning to a self pleasure practice is a very healthy practice for any man or woman. If you can't love your own body and bring your own needs to completion, then how can anyone else really, right? You're kind of just projecting these things on other people. So ultimately, that's what did it for me. I go into depth in this in my multi-orgasmic man course, but there's a lot of resources here as well on my YouTube channel for kind of transforming that dynamic into a non-ejaculatory one, releasing the addiction to ejaculatory orgasm. And again, having outlets for your this is the whole thing about the internal sexual alchemy, doing microcosmic orbit, transforming the energy of your body, your sexual energy, refining it, getting better and better at these internal Neigong practices of transforming the shape of that energy and having creative outlets in your life, being productive, living a purposeful life where you're putting your energy into other things. Because if you're just sitting on the couch every day, if you're just, working in a job you hate and you're trying to build up you're practicing semen retention, this energy is building and building, but you're not putting it into anything productive. Yeah, it's going to make you feel really frustrated. So it's a pattern of stuckness. Something's stuck when you're sexually frustrated. So what's stuck in your life? Look into that. Okay, JK says, I have all sensation on my frenulum area. I can keep it up until stimulation is on the frenulum, or I am manually stimulating. As soon as I stop, I lose my erection. Why is this happening? So you can keep it up until your frenulum is being stimulated, then you lose your erection, or basically when you stop stimulating you lose your erection immediately. So this is often due to, there's many factors to erection, but if it's like a short-lived erection, actually, I just made a video on this. Check out my recent video of why am I losing my erection during sex. It will pertain to this as well. But the most common things for men in this situation where, yeah, the erection just is, it's not that you have full-on erectile dysfunction, it's just, not the highest erection potency. And I've experienced this at times, and it's taught me a lot about, what causes this. A big thing to look into is your hormone levels. Do you have high testosterone? Balancing your hormones, regulating your diet, your sleep, exercise, make sure you're moving your blood, sleeping well, getting hydrated, eating clean foods, getting all of your essential minerals will support healthy hormone levels. Low testosterone can cause you kinds of issues, but it can be other things. Stress, excessive stress, which will often affect your hormones as well. But yeah, generally getting plenty of rest. Make sure you have a clean diet that's supporting testosterone. Look up a testosterone building diet. Getting all of your essential minerals, zinc, selenium, boron, magnesium, very important. Massaging your balls, icing your balls too will build testosterone. And also cardio exercise, specifically lower body intensive cardio. I do intense cardio at least 3 times a week. For me, that's elliptical. I've been doing like interval sprinting is amazing too. But the more your blood vessels in your lower body develop, the more blood can freely flow in and out of your penis. Also, pelvic floor can tie into this. If you have a really tight pelvic floor, that can cause all kinds of erection problems. I've experienced this as well. It's too bad that the biggest advice, like doctors and people teaching sexual stuff for men, teach is to do Kegels. So better erections, do Kegels. Premature ejaculation, do Kegels. This actually usually makes the situation worse in the long run. Pelvic floor tightness results in poor blood flow in and out of the penises, which is what truly drives an erection. If you need to squeeze your pelvic floor to hold an erection, you have a poor functioning pelvic floor. So those are some different things can affect it. Lucius. Okay, dragon herbs, deer placenta. Yeah, it's weird that maybe the word placenta was placenta was triggering something. Now my video is gonna get shut down like my Instagram live did. Okay, so yeah, I got it. I feel it's rejuvenating. It made me realize how much my body wants to rest as opposed to being stimulated. Have you tried it already? How long should one be taking it? I have tried the deer placenta. It's been many years ago, and I don't really remember having a strong effect from it, but it was a time when I had pretty good gene levels anyways. So I don't have a ton of experience with that one, but I would do a bit of research, um, how long you should be taking that. But yeah, it's a big gene booster for sure. And that's something that happens when you start rebuilding. I think you were asking about he show woo on one of the other lives I did. And it's kind of the same thing where sometimes when you take these tonifying herbs, especially like the kidney building herbs, you actually feel a little more tired and you want to rest more. And you're like, what? I thought this was supposed to give me more energy. But it's usually actually balancing your system because if your nervous system's been so overstimulated and you feel like you have a ton of energy, but you're really just overstimulated and in sympathetic mode 24/7. I've experienced this. Uh, then it actually is balancing you and you're feeling tired, which is a good thing because now you can slow down a bit, give yourself some rest. And after, a few days or weeks, whatever of that state, you will feel much more balanced and have much more sustainable energy. It's been my experience. But yeah, I'm not really sure how long to take deer placenta, if that's one that you like cycle or what. I haven't taken that one very much. Gabrielle says, how much time do you think it would take to heal myself and any good advice? I'm actually a healthy individual who's in his 20s and is pretty fit. I'm not sure if there was like if you commented with a specific thing you were asking about that will take long to heal. Might have gotten cut off from YouTube, so you could type that back in. But I'm not exactly sure what time you're talking about or like what you're talking about healing yourself from. RRH says every time I practice semen retention, I get wet dreams. Is that normal? It's pretty normal. Uh, Ed, I've talked about this a lot. I should probably do another YouTube video on this because people are always asking about this. But basically, with wet dreams, if it's happening like multiple times a week, then it's probably something else going on. It can be related to kidney yin weakness in Chinese medicine, weak kidney energy. But it can also simply be what happens is you start practicing semen retention, you are building up an excess. The body has an oversupply of semen. It's like overflowing. It's like, hey, we gotta let some of this loose. This dude is, we gotta keep things flowing here. It's getting it's backing up. It's backing up in his intestines. Obviously not, but So naturally, the body will release. So you may notice if it's like a certain time frequency, like no matter like no matter what you do, after 2 weeks you have a wet dream. No matter what you do after 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, that may actually be when your body optimally actually wants to release semen. My understanding on semen retention is that it's not like the longer you go, the better. Obviously, ejaculating every day is too much, way too much. But for some men, trying to go forever can actually be harmful, or just overall, yeah, the body's like not having it. It's like, whatever, he's asleep. We know we need to let this old dying semen go, because the sperm dies eventually, and it's either reabsorbed into the body, or it's released as, or like some of the waste matter is released as a wet dream, and they're usually not depleting as a straight up ejaculation is. So don't worry too much about it. Check out my videos on this. There's some things you can do to prevent them, but if it's just like no matter what you do, it's happening, don't worry about it. The important, I would say the important mindset of sexual cultivation and semen retention is not about I can't ejaculate no matter what. That's a very unhealthy thought form to be holding. It's more of like, okay, my intention is to recycle and to circulate this energy through my entire body as much as I possibly can. And then if I ejaculate, whatever, at least I've been mindful about it and I'm redirecting it and enjoying it rather than like trying to hold on to it tightly. Okay, Amber says, what are some key ways a woman can help heal her male partner's sexual energy and be supportive of his sexual healing? Good question. So first of all, with this work, it's important to understand that you can't really like do anything for anyone. Like if you want, your partner to do these practices or have this kind of lifestyle, but he's just not interested in it, there's only so much you can do. But you can definitely plant the seed and give him different resources. Say, hey, if you were to try this practice, it will, I think, would greatly benefit your life. And I've had people reach out to me who either men whose female partners actually turned them on to my work and they were like thanking me for it, or like women who told me they've introduced their man to my work and it's really changed their life. But I know that some men can feel like threatened, like, oh, who's this guy you're watching, and you're trying to get me to do this stuff like him. And I can understand how it can be kind of a confrontational thing for men. So it's a tricky situation for sure. But overall, you can encourage him to create more sensation in his entire body, not rush during sex. We'll say like, hey, if you're normally just like going to town right to an ejaculation, what if you slow down a bit? What if you breathe deeply? What if we like pause for a bit and just like feel what it feels like to be connected, and just like enjoy that feeling and just like breathe together and like feel like, what if you can like feel that pleasure move up your spine, move up into your belly, breathe deeply. You can share some different exercises and things like that. And just, it sounds like you're supportive of your partner and open to like communicate and stuff about these things. So I think that's great as well. It's just having the conversation, because ultimately, here's the thing is like sometimes people get into relationships with someone and then they're like trying to like make them become someone else. And sometimes, they're up for like changing, but sometimes not. Sometimes it's just like that person is who they are. That's, who you decide to be in a relationship with. And, it is kind of is what it is. But maybe that was kind of too assuming that the partner's not doing this practice. So if he is kind of interested in this stuff and living the lifestyle, then support him in um, opening up his body more, bringing more sensation through. That's a big thing for men. Is like during sex, what helps men last longer is being more, having their energy dispersed through the whole body. So like rubbing your hands around his, up his back, up his chest, it will create more sensation in his upper body and be like, oh yeah, I forgot that like my back can feel good as well. It's not just this thing down here, right? Yeah. And you can also do the practice of the microcosmic orbit yourself. You can be aware of his energy flowing, kind of guide it with your mind, and also, um, be aware of like creating whether you're creating suction with the yoni, because there's a tendency for women to create this suction in the yoni, especially as they're approaching orgasm, and that will pull, a lesser skilled man's ejaculation right out, which is fine. But you can also be aware of like, okay, how can I kind of like relax this area and maybe create more of this like push into him, push my sexual energy into him, so it like he feels a bit more of this, less of a pull in of your energy, more of this like, oh, this will kind of push my sexual energy up my spine. Just some, hopefully some of that's helpful. JRAK says, hey, does retaining cause lower back pain? Not from my understanding. It's not something I've experienced in relation to this, but lower back pain is extremely common for, most people at some point, like especially getting into like your 30s and things like that. So it's just a pretty common thing. So it may or may not have any relation to it, but it can also relate to like kidney energy. Um, Lower back pain in the kidneys, kind of contraction around the kidneys, like the psoas muscle, all these things can be related. There's a really great exercise for this where basically you lay against a wall. So you put your, okay, here's a wall. This is my legs. So I put my butt up against the wall, laying on my back, put my legs up, feet up against the wall, and just have them straight and relax, spend 5 to 10 minutes in that. That helps release the lower back, because the lower back rarely gets a release. Even like doing stretches and things like that doesn't really release it. So that's a good exercise. Oyusama Wanasi, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, says, hey, Johnathan, I think you inspire me to improve a lot. You always talk about your teen life before, back when you were practicing all alone. I think I can relate a lot. Thanks, dude. Hey, thanks for joining, and glad you're benefiting from it. And it was actually my 20s when I was definitely doing a lot of work alone in my teenage years, but it wasn't conscious. It was just a porn on Pornhub. But yeah, it was my early 20s when I was exploring the sexual kung fu practices. Pure Vibration says, maybe you can help. What is the best way to learn to control and extend sex duration? Well, um, this kind of is centered around usually the man's ability to last longer. So it's about the man being able to control his ejaculation. And I have a whole, take my free course, my free ejaculation control course. There's a link in most of my videos to it. Yeah, so controlling, extending the duration of sex is about, for men, overcoming the ejaculation response, at least delaying it. And this basically involves keeping your nervous system calm, staying in the parasympathetic state. Deep breathing is a good tool for this, and also spreading sensation, spreading the nervous system electricity and excitement through the entire body. And this is really one level of what the microcosmic orbit is, of circulating, drawing that excitement upwards in the body, so that the body can hold a lot of arousal. Just the penis and testicles alone can't hold too much before it blows. So breathing, mindfulness, awareness of the body, relaxation of the pelvic floor. There's a lot of tools to this. But yeah, I made many videos about this. Okay, energy work tips you might have. Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Working with his, let's see, where would men store their? You know what? A really actually great practice is Chine Song, ChineItSang. I did a course in this. It's an abdominal kind of energy work massage. It's very powerful because we hold a lot in our core, our belly area. So like massaging his body, it could be as simple as that. Like because we hold these patterns in our body. So like if he has certain areas that are like really tight, always tense, he's got pains, aches, whatever. But like especially like the belly area and like the lower belly, massaging around this area can help kind of free up this flow of energy. There's often a lot of repressed stuff in there. So yeah, and also helping him connect his sexual center with his heart center. So like, I mean, if you're in an intimate, uh, play situation, you can put a hand on his genitals, a hand on his heart, and either you energetically connect these with your awareness intention, or you ask him to like breathe between them both, and that could be a very powerful kind of breathing into his heart space, connecting that to his sexual energy. Very, very powerful. Okay, JK says, what are your thoughts on a condition called venogenic ED, erectile dysfunction? It is very distressing how all people saying symptoms of this in all forms and doctors talking about this stresses me. Okay, here's the thing with, I mean, this is probably related to like the vein is, however you pronounce it, leakage, which often means that like they say that your blood vessels in your penis just aren't holding the blood properly. There's a lot of I will say this: I don't vibe strongly with a lot of like Western medicine, and they're uh, diagnosing you with something, then you identify that. Well, I have this. I got to carry this background. Hi, my name's Johnathan, and I have venogenic erectile dysfunction. I am venogenic erectile dysfunction. Is what you're saying. You identify with these things. So, um, what I already said about erections, check out my video on erections and things like that. I also recommend you check out Angion method, Angion. I feel like it's been a few lives since I've mentioned this. Any man can overcome erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, whatever. I know doctors want to like diagnose you and like, so that you pay them the rest of your life to give you a pill that doesn't actually fix anything, just, helps with some of the symptoms, whatever. So yeah, look up Angion method. And you may find that insightful because it develops the blood vessels in your penis for better erections. Check your diet, rest, hormone levels, exercise, loosen up your pelvic floor. That'll be helpful. Thanks for joining, Lucius. Have a good night. Okay. Pure Vibration says, but why, when in different sexual positions, I can last longer than others? So this is another factor of ejaculation control, is that different positions will stimulate the penis differently. And the big understanding here is that this is a penis. This area right here is the frenulum. And this is basically and I know I get men sometimes saying, well, I was circumcised, I don't have a frenulum. But like, okay, this area though, if you don't have a frenulum, where the frenulum would be, if you want to get really technical, right? So this area is the ejaculation trigger, basically. There's nerves here that connect to your prostate, and it creates a signal when it's being stimulated to contract. And when that contraction builds to a maximum, you ejaculate. So ejaculation is a buildup of tension. It's a contraction that eventually leads to that spasming of the prostate. So different positions will stimulate this more. Usually rear entry positions, like doggy style, puts all the pressure on that frenulum. So avoid that type of position if you have difficulty lasting longer. Having a higher angle, so like stimulating more of the upper part of your penis, you basically want to place your less sensitive areas of your penis in your partner's most sensitive area. So like, okay, this is a vagina. This is my hand vagina. Every man's got one, right? So this is the upper part of the vagina, which is, there's the G spot here. There's all kinds of sensitive areas here. So when you get the upper part of your penis to stimulate those, so your less sensitive parts hit her more sensitive parts, and your like pubic bones right on her clitoris, boom, helps you last longer, and they experience more pleasure. And being at like a higher angle, like placing some pillows under her bottom, putting her on the edge of the bed, and also and just kind of an energetic quality of positions. Like when you're on your back, some men will be able to last longer because you can relax more, you can breathe, you can be more aware of what's happening, and etc. But also when you're on top, you're in control, so you have a bit more control over it, so you may find that easier. Another thing though is positions where your feet are on the ground. So like you're standing, you're in kind of a horse stance too. That really helps men last longer. Kind of on an energetic level, your feet are on the earth, you're connected to earth chi. It's grounding and a bit cooling to your energy. And also kind of loads your legs with some pressure. So it helps kind of direct that nervous system excitement out of your genitals, and, the legs take some of that. So yeah, sexual positions will affect how long you can last. So we use that to your advantage. That's a big secret right there, baby. Well, one of them. Rendell Frank says, is sexual energy ageless when you take care of it? Yes, definitely. I believe so anyway. I think we were meant to have, potent, robust sexual vitality until we die, basically. And hopefully beyond, right? But yeah, it really is a use it or lose it type situation. Also an awareness of how to manage this, because for men, if you just ejaculate every single day, you're going to dry up your sexual energy, put your body in depletion, and you're just going to be a dry old person with a limp penis. But if you exercise it, if you keep you exercise your body, exercise your mind, exercise your genitals, sex keeps you young. It really does when you engage in it properly. Being in a state of arousal alone generates all these hormones. And as a man, when you're having non-ejaculatory sex, even non-ejaculatory self-stimulation, your testosterone's increasing, all these youthful hormones, and you don't ejaculate at the end, so you store all of that. This is the fountain of youth. And this is really what a lot of the Taoist sexual practices were designed for, was how to engage in sex in a healthy way so it builds your health rather than hurting your health. It's like, okay, here's this natural thing people love doing. How can we cultivate with it? How can we use it to our highest health, vitality, and happiness? This is what Taoist sexology is all about. MD says, do you have live Zoom classes? So I have, from time to time, I do some. I have one coming up in a few weeks I'll be announcing. And I also, with my group who's in the men who joined my multi-orgasmic man course, which has been over 1,000 men now, we have Zoom calls every 2 weeks where I do a little training. We have a Q&A. They ask the questions, what their experience through the course, and all these things. So that as well. Sky Traveler says, lady on top helps last longer and ladies enjoy too. It's true. It's very true. Okay, Uesama says, why is it hard to let go of the tension in your pelvic floor, especially at first? Because it's often deeply ingrained tension that we've had for years and years. And this is a very kind of core, the pelvic floor, it holds up our body. So there's often a lot of pressure on it, especially as we tend to, men especially tend to be very tight in the hips. So lack of hip mobility increases this tension, this kind of blockage and stiffness in that area of the body. And spending a lot of time sitting down is bad for that as well. So it's just a buildup. Plus, I think this really, really relates to our nervous system state. If you have a lot of stress when you're constantly in the fight or flight sympathetic mode, then you will have a lot more tension in your body. And a lot of us hold this tension in the pelvic floor. So just whatever reason, we hold a lot of deep seated tension in the pelvic floor. So it can take months to clear this. Doing the pelvic floor, check out my pelvic floor rehabilitation video for some really great exercises. But what I found the most helpful was basically reverse Kegels and doing a stretch routine of opening the pelvic floor, which is like really deep, deep squats, butterfly position, frog pose, all these different ones. And also opening up the hips. Like I've been doing split stretching. I can do is it front splits or is it side splits where your legs are in front and behind? I can do that now. So, and that really has opened up my hips and mobility and pelvic floor relaxation as well. All right, guys. I think we got through all the questions. Easier when I'm not on Instagram as well. So thanks everyone for joining. Let's see. I've got some announcements coming soon, but for now, enjoy your weekend and work on your sexual energy. Cultivate yourself. Keep yourself in the flow, balance, and take care, guys. Thanks for joining.